episode. See, I did it again. I don't know why I say welcome back. Welcome back to hanging out, but you haven't been to this episode yet, and you are now. So, welcome. Hello there. All right, maybe not. So we are continuing our discussions here on the unveiling. Nope, wrong one. Life in the IEP Tribe.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, I promise I didn't. I don't. That just like slipped out of my face.
Trying to plug.
No. I don't want to put any more stress on our listeners.
All right.
But what we are going to do today is, it's funny. I said we're not going to put any stress on our listeners, but today's topic of conversation is one that it's a pretty heavy topic. The reason it is because of the impact that it has on those experiencing it. And at the same time, I think sometimes that people kind of create or shape these experiences and not even realizing what they're doing. There's a strong possibility that there is an adult, whether it's a parent, a teacher, whatever the case may be, an individual that interacts with others, and specifically children in our conversation, that are generating traumatic experiences. And like I said, they may not even know. They may not even know what they're doing is building onto this anxiety or fear that a child already possesses. And so one of the things that we found out through research is that there is a direct correlation. You can see the impact of traumatic experience on children with special needs. And now, whenever you talk about special needs, there's a long list. Whether it is a learning disability or a cognition, right? Some things aren't just acting in the typical manner. And then we have students that are more profoundly disabled and things like that. But all of these children are open to the possibility of experiencing trauma. So one of the things that I've read talks about how these disabilities can kind of play into that, right? Like if I'm a child that can't communicate clearly, I can't speak, I can't share my thoughts, my interactions with other people have a higher possibility of generating trauma in my life because although I cannot express it in words, I feel trapped inside my own head. I can't let those around me know how I feel about specific experiences or things that are going on. And so, with all that said, we believe that it's a great opportunity to discuss the impact of trauma on these children, on special needs students, and kind of bring to the surface an understanding for teachers and parents alike, or anybody that, works in the community. Because what we're finding is that our special needs community is just going to continue to grow. The numbers are increasing, and we will come across more people that possess some sort of special needs. So it's important as we kind of navigate through life that we remember that our actions, our words, our deeds impact those around us. We may not always see exactly how. So, Laura.
Yes.
What do you got for us?
What do I got? Okay, so I know we talked about this in our last episode. I think we covered the impact of trauma on children, trauma on behavior. Talked a little bit about what trauma is, these adverse childhood experiences. And, we talked about the gaps in teacher understanding or other adult understanding, whether it be, like you said, other caregivers or teachers or therapists or whatever it may be. But as you said, the children, identification of children with special needs is growing, and so is these childhood experiences that are traumatic, and apparently that not apparently from what I've read on it is that it's increasing every year, and that by the time a child hits 16, about 66% of children will have at least one experience that could be traumatic, especially since COVID. And the what I found through research is that more than 150,000 children in the United States lost a parent during COVID, and that is one of those traumatic experiences.
That's a crazy number.
It is. It's a lot. Um, and we talked about how it impacts them at school, um, and it's not always possible to undo the damage that these experiences have created. A lot of times we have traumatic experiences, and through therapy or through just time away from the amount of time from the experience, that we can move on and it doesn't have as much of an impact. However, as you stated, sometimes we have the children that can't talk about their experiences, so therapies may be more difficult. Sometimes if they can't let anybody know they've had these experiences, and so nobody knows that something has happened to them unless it's evident, like the loss of a parent. But sometimes the children that face abuse and neglect can't come to school or can't go to therapies and tell people, hey, this is what's going on in my life. And so it makes it harder for them to deal with their traumatic experiences. However, there are ways to help them if we know what's going on. And as with diagnosing children with disabilities, that early intervention is key. Is that if you can start working on these experiences and working on helping them come to terms with it and give them tools to use early, then that's the key to helping them identify it and intervene and give them treatments that help them. And unfortunately, as you talked about, our students with disabilities are more likely to have these experiences. However, just because they have a traumatic experience doesn't always impact them to the point where they receive services. So sometimes having that IEP allows people to know, okay, there's more going on, but sometimes it's not enough to get them those services and have people have a document that they can read. Oh, wow, this child lost a parent, or, this RIPs don't always talk about like home life, but sometimes they do. But there's not always a document that comes with the students that have experienced trauma to tell us how to work with them. And so historically, the way that children with trauma have been intervened with has been like a zero tolerance or blanket policies. And no, we just don't do that. And that causes a lot more harm than it does. Because like you said, if we don't know what's going on with the student, if we just, punish the behavior instead of trying to figure out the function of it and what they're trying to communicate, then it does more harm than good.
One of the kind of slogans that we go by is that behavior is communication, right? So whether or not a kid can necessarily tell us what's going on, there are indicators in behavior that there is something going on. And I think that one of the things that like our generation came up thinking is that we want kids to behave just to behave. And so what happens is we tend to punish the undesired behavior. But what we need to do and what we need to put at the forefront of our mind when dealing with not only children but adults for that matter is asking the question, what is it that has caused this individual to believe that this is the best way to express themselves? Now, like we've already said, as far as kids go, I mean, there's a good chance they don't even know what they're expressing. And so, as parents, as teachers, as members of a community, we have a responsibility to look into the why behind what's going on. What might be causing that behavior? Be willing to have those conversations, like in our case, and have those conversations with people that work in the school system with us. To have those conversations with principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors, so on and so forth, and to kind of get an idea of how, like, what can we look for? What is it that really take the time to see what is it that presents itself prior to the behavior? And so, what are some things that we can do? What are some things that we look for? What are some how do we try to connect with these children, whether I be a parent again or a teacher, or whatever the case may be? What do I look for in when I'm trying to figure out how to support the student?
Are you saying like what do we look for as far as what the children are presenting, or in how to work with them?
What would you like to talk about?
Well, I believe the previous episode we covered, what it can do to children, what things that they might present, the low academics, the undesired behaviors, and whatnot. And so, as far as in the school setting goes, there's been benefits to helping teachers and staff, giving them that professional development in how to work with students that may be presenting behaviors due to these adverse childhood experiences. And some of the things that in the classroom or in the therapy session or services that they can do is implement some strategies that they're proactive, and instead of waiting for the behavior to happen, they can strategies to help prevent the behavior. One key one is build a relationship with these students and get to know them. And I think we've talked about that in other aspects. I mean, that relationship building and getting to know them. And I know teachers have so much on their plate that is difficult, because it's they have a lot that says, okay, you have to do this, and teach, test, assess. And so it makes it difficult when you have 20, 25, sometimes some places 30 students to get to know each one, to have that time to each one. And, but that is one of the best ways that you can help these students, that you can show them you're interested. And when they trust you, they're more likely to be able to express their needs, or be able to talk about what they've gone through if they're able to communicate. When they know that you care, they're less likely to present these behaviors as well. Another positive tactic or strategy that they can use, peer groupings. You take a student that is a positive role model and peer them up, or pair them up with one or two other peers in the classroom. And we see a lot of that peer modeling that excuse me words that help students, show them, these other students can show them this is what we do, and then also choices. We found choices help a lot, especially in our classrooms, because a lot of times students with disabilities and students that have these experiences, they feel like they have no control over their lives.
Right.
And that everything is dictated for them, everything is chosen for them, and they're told what to do and how to do it and when to do it. So if you offer them some choices, not just whatever you want to do choices, however, offer choices that still gets the outcome that we want, however, but that it gives them some of that control. Do you want to use the pencil or do you want to use a marker? Do you want to do this sheet first or that sheet first? You still want them to do the two sheets. However, you give them the choice of what order they do it in. Do you want to do this before or after recess? This has to be done. When is it going to be done? That kind of thing. So those are some pretty good strategies there, because when there's more positive teacher relationships to teacher-student relationships, you end up with positive outcomes.
So let's think about this for a second, because I think that whole lack of control thing is a really important piece to the puzzle, because what we do know is that traumatic experiences can happen in a vast amount of ways, right? There's, like I said before, there's some that is inflicted on others that they don't even realize what they're doing to this other person. And then there's some people that are just evil,
right?
And they do evil things. And so let's consider for a moment being a child, whether it's kindergarten, third grade, seventh grade, whatever. And like most of us, we can't necessarily control the things that are done to us, right? We can run from situations. We can fight back. We can, however, we can't control what somebody else does.
Right.
Okay. So now if I'm a smaller person, if I'm a smaller child and I am afraid, I can't fight back. I can't, there's nothing I can do to stop that. In my mind, I have to endure this and there's nothing I can do about it. Then on top of that, I'm going to go out into society, in this case, a school. And on top of not being able to control what people do to me, I don't even have a say in what I get to do. So I am enslaved to the decision making of everybody else. And now we want you to behave. Like how does that even make any sense? When we look at it that way, I mean, anybody that has half a brain would agree, wow, that's horrible.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to be a scholar or a rocket scientist to realize that situation has somebody, and that child may not be able to vocalize it, but they are stuck. They have no control. So by doing the things that you're talking about, well, now I do have some control in the things I should be able to control. Thank you for allowing me to do this instead of this. And I have these options and I have these choices instead of just being told to sit down and be quiet or sit down and do your work or, whatever that may be. And so I think that's another place that we kind of run into some difficulty when it comes to being parents of special needs children, being teachers of special needs children, being administrators in a school that has special needs children. Is how do we help them develop the skills that we know will be beneficial for them moving into the future without being too heavy-handed or being a pushover? Like, where is that
Right.
line?
You have to have a balance.
So, because what we can't have is especially with children, we can't have children that are just, wheels off all the time and just leave them alone and be like, well, just be wheels off.
Right.
because your life's a little bit harder than others, or you're dealing with these, situations. And I'm not making light of those,
Right.
but we're not helping when we say, well, just act it out. Equally, we're causing issues when we're trying to suppress the expression of the child.
Right. Like you said, there has to be a balance because, I mean, we found even with our children with special needs, regardless of trauma or not, if, we feel, and of course we're going to empathize and sympathize with with our students. However, if we don't try to work to correct it because we feel sorry for them, we're not doing them any good, and say, well, I feel bad because they've had this or they have this, or so I'm going to try to make life easy on them. They're going to grow up, and not everybody is going to have that same outlook on them.
Well, I was just looking at this. There's a chapter in the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Disability, and it talks about how developmental trauma and disability and mental health, how they all kind of, you'll see them run together, because these children that have these disabilities are unfortunately at a higher risk of experiencing trauma and maltreatment because they don't always have an audible voice. Unfortunately, they end up around people that are very do what I say because I say it, and really not helping the child move towards what is best for them. I just had a conversation the other day, as a matter of fact, with somebody, and talking about the importance of the volume of our voice and how that impacts students and how they're going to receive what we're saying. Because naturally, when people are mad at us, they yell at us.
Right.
And what we don't want to teach our kids is that, well, you're in trouble because I'm mad at you. Right? Kids, here's just a little side note. If you discipline your kid because you're mad at them, that's abuse. Don't do that. Don't do that. If you're disciplining your child because you want to see them become a better member of society, well, you don't have to yell at them, right? Because you don't want them to learn that just because you did something I don't like, I can yell at you. What you want them to learn is what it is that you want them to learn, right? I'm not going to yell at a kid for cussing in our classroom.
Right.
Because if I yell at him, what he's going to realize, well, Mr. Curtis is mad at me. And because he's mad at me, he can punish me, or he can not punish me. I don't do anything to them. That sounds horrible. I had this one student one time I was talking to, and he was very mad at me. And we're just talking. I'm trying to get him to understand the importance of not losing his mind in the middle of a classroom. And he just starts saying, "Don't spank me." I'm like, what? Like, we have never had any type of relationship even close to that. But, and that was just his way of expressing himself.
Yeah, when he's in trouble, that's what happens. And so that's what he figured. Well, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong. So this is what's going to happen.
Mr. Curtis.
This is what's going to happen. Well, and once again, that kind of shows you how kids correlate people who have authority over them.
Mm-hmm.
So, it makes it difficult for them to differentiate what is okay and what's not okay, because obviously that child thought that you have authority over him. He's in trouble. That's okay for you to do.
Yeah, he made me mad. So the next step is,
and not saying that that's anything wrong with, if that's how his parent, if that's how they discipline at home, that's up to them. But he figured, didn't, which is one of the reasons why our kids with disabilities do end up having these traumatic experiences, people taking advantage of them because they can't differentiate that, what is okay, what's not okay. Just like I said, side note there.
Yeah, I like that. The only problem with side notes is I forget where we were.
Oh, right. Yeah, so. We get to going down the rabbit holes. We're talking about that, how to help these children to deal with these things, and talking about schools and how to help them to deal with them and the behaviors, communication, and instead of just punishing the behavior, really need to figure out the why of the behavior and try to determine what works best. And I think we've also talked about before, what works for one child doesn't work for the other child. We have students that will work hard so they can get a desired object. We have students that will work hard so they can get a sticker or a gummy bear. And so, that's part of that relationship building is learning what works with the student. And yes, it's difficult because, like we said, teachers are already overworked and have a lot on them and
underprepared. We talked about that.
Right.
That's what you said in the opening is that we have teachers that don't have the training that they need. So what do we do about that? Like, what do we do about that as teachers? What do we do about that as parents? What do we do about that as members of our society? How do we approach the issue of really providing a safe place where students that have experienced trauma can begin to heal?
It all starts with educating ourselves as parents, teachers, mentors, therapy providers, and helping us determine what behaviors are due to trauma responses and what behaviors are not, and how to support those students rather than punish them. And so it all starts with that learning where districts and schools, if your district or your school offers a course on that, a public or professional development, if it's it's one of those you get to choose from, take it and help to help identify some of these behaviors that are not just a student that is mad and acting out, that there's more behind it, and learn some strategies to work with them, like we talked about pairing students up and options and that's really one of the ways. And also and this is a hard one, that as the adult that for that time is in charge, so to speak, of this child, we also have to do some self-reflection.
Absolutely.
And, look at our own social and emotional skills.
Mm-hmm.
Because we may be going through things too. We may have some, responses that are due to some of the experiences we've had.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to take that look and say, okay, am I responding in this way because of something I've gone through? And, okay, why am I yelling? Why am I letting this get to me? And, that need for control in our life.
Mm-hmm.
What is that from? So that's probably one of the most difficult aspects of all of this, is to figure out what our responses are and how to deal with it. And one of the key terms that we've had this year is what hill are you willing to die on? Is it really that important that student do 20 multiplication facts when they know their multiplication facts?
If they can show you with 10, does it need to be 20? If they can show you with 5, does it need to be 20?
Right. So, choose your battles. And we've also had that fair and equal conversation. If looking at a page of 20 multiplication facts spins this child out of control, is it that important? But you don't have to let everybody else in the class not do their work.
Right.
You can take that paper and say, okay, fold it in half. Even if you can do that too, the way you present it, fold it in half or fold it in quarters and have them flip it. So then it's not so overbearing. So, so those are some things I think as the adult in these children's lives that we need to focus on.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would want to add to that is feel free to contact your board of education in your district. Ask questions. Give ideas.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we've experienced in our district is that we've had the opportunity to sit down with the decision makers that are at the top of that pyramid, and they have not only listened to us but appreciate what we bring to the table, because it's all about the kids.
Right.
How do we help the kids become? It's not just how do we get them to pass tests, but how do we get them to help them become members of society that want to make a difference, that want to care about others, that care about where they are, that care about their families. Right? We want to see the whole child become somebody that will support the environment, or support the community that they live in. And so, yeah, reach out to your district, make phone calls, shoot emails.
Start with your guidance counselors and your school social workers, and hey, I have something going on in my classroom with this student. Maybe could you come observe? Because the counselors and social workers, they're trained to identify this.
Mm-hmm. And as parents, parents call,
right?
Like connect with as many people as you can, because it seems that when we as human beings work together, we get more things done.
Right. Well, and as parents, there's nothing wrong with taking your child to get some therapy. Like, and even if they can't express what's going on, and I don't know if we've talked about it before with Xander. Xander was going through an emotional time, and he couldn't express to us what was going on, but he would have this flood of emotions that would change by the second. And so we took him to play therapy. And through that, his therapist was able to help us understand what was going on, because that's what he's trained to do. We're not.
Right.
We're parents. We're not therapists. And I know there's a stigma behind that. There's nothing wrong with getting your child as much help as you.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
And so if your child is presenting these behaviors and you don't know why, contact a therapist and see if they can, a child therapist, a play therapist, and hopefully they can give you some insight there.
Well, I think we're going to wrap this one up.
All right.
I feel like this conversation may continue.
Okay.
In the future. We'll see.
Okay.
But hey, if you have any ideas or subject matter that you would love to talk to us about, or hear us talk about, or whatever the case may be, some topics that are important in your life, please contact us at lifeintheieptribe@gmail.com. You can find us on the Facebooks, and that's pretty much where we spend most of our time. But yeah, contact us. Let us know what's up. And we would love to hear from you and continue these conversations. So until next time.